What Division 1 baseball and business leadership have in common? According to Damon Lembi, best-selling author, CEO of Learn It, and host of Learn It All podcast, is everything. In this episode, Damon shares his powerful journey from a baseball field to the boardroom, revealing how a competitive mindset, lifelong learning, and a willingness to evolve helped him turn his family's training company into a thriving force that upskills over 2 million professionals. If you're a founder, leader, or anyone navigating constant change, this is the blueprint for staying relevant and resilient. We also dive into how Damon helps companies build culture that attract and retain the top talent in the age of AI, remote working, and burnout. He pulls back from the curtain on what today's leaders need most, how to serve multi-generational teams, and what it takes to build a learn-it-all business that's ready for anything. Packed with leadership insights and real talk about growth, this conversation is a must listen for anyone serious about scaling their business and scaling themselves. Hello, Damon. How are you today?
Mark, it's great to be here. It's an honor for having me on the show, so thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being a guest on my show. We're going to go straight into Learn It and just explore that. It's helped upskill over 2 million individuals. What's the first step you took when working with an organization to foster that Learn It All culture?
The first step when it comes to fostering a learn it all culture, when we go look at working with a prospect or a customer, is we want to make sure that they're a good fit and that they really buy into learning, and they're not more of a check the box, we're going to do it because people say we have to, but not really partner with you on it. So that's really the first step, is try to ask some questions like, what have you done in the past? Are you able to carve out time for your team? What are some of the business goals that you want to tie back into through the learning?
So how do you work out with their business goals? Because a lot of businesses, they understand where they're going, but they don't always understand what that goal is, what that ambition is, where do they want to be able to achieve. Is it a difficult discussion sometimes when they're talking about business goals?
It is very difficult when it comes to learning and L&D, because sometimes it's hard to really show tangible ROI on what we can do. But typically what we've found over the last 6 months, if you invest with your team, for your team and your people, you're going to have higher retention, because people, especially these days where you have multiple generations, people want to feel valued and invested in. So they're going to come to work and they're going to want to stay. There's a study, I think it was a LinkedIn study, it said 86% of people would be more likely to stay if their company invested in them, whether it's in coaching or training. So that's one thing we do. One of the most important things we do is we partner with our customers who are looking to move people from individual contributors to new managers. And Mark, I'm sure you know as well as anybody that in any size business, small business, you put somebody in to be a sales leader because they're a great individual salesperson. That could be a recipe for disaster if you don't help them achieve the kind of skills that they need, because it's a completely different skill set. So we help design programs that get people ready to learn how to delegate, how to build trust, coach people. Those are two of the areas where we can show business outcomes, because people leave because they have bad managers. So, yeah. You want to retain your top talent. You want to get everybody working together, collaborating on the same page. And those are just two of the ways. The third way that we're seeing a lot now is we're doing a lot of work around AI. And I'm not talking about building prompts or building agents, but helping our organizations, our customers, go through the change about being less fearful and adopting AI, and how leaders are eventually going to be managing both humans and agents.
Before we get into AI, obviously we're going to cover that, and that was something I wanted to ask you, but I wanted to ask you about the bespoke nature of the courses, the training that you do. So if a client comes online and they sign up, how much of it is bespoke and how much of it is pre-formatted on areas that you think would be important to companies?
So, great question. What we do, so Learn It is a live learning platform. So I would say 85% of our content we do it over Zoom, and 15% in person. And we have some on-demand videos. You can go to our website, YouTube channel. We got a lot of videos up there. We focus on the core topics, like I mentioned some of them, feedback, delegation, and we've built and designed, Mark, our own models, right? So we have our own models for the for growth model, the ear model for listening. And we start with that, and then we go in and we want to say we tailor it, not customize it completely, because we have our point of view on what we think these models should be like. But then if we're working with a manufacturing company, we'll make sure that we're using case studies, success stories, and acumen that's related to their organization. Because if you're in manufacturing, you don't want a healthcare example, right?
Yeah.
So we want to make it engaging and tied back to with the challenges that they're experiencing. Last thing I'll say about it, across the board, most organizations and industries, they think they're unique, but what I've always seen is that there's similar problems just with a different tint to it. So we call it tailoring.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you work with these companies, you train them. So a lot of it is online still rather than the face-to-face?
We've been around 30 years, which is crazy to think about. And at first, it was mostly in-person, face-to-face. And then a lot of that pivoted during COVID. I'm happy to go through all that. And so some of it's starting to get back in person, but I would still say about 85% is, we like to call it virtual or online, which is good for us because it helps us scale. We have customers in London. We have them all over the world. A lot of times they're headquartered out of the US, but it allows us to scale. But I am seeing the trend moving upwards where people want to get people back in the office and more in-person collaboration. I like that too, by the way.
Yeah, no, it is much more fun, isn't it, doing more stuff in person. How do you measure success for your clients when they're working with you on leadership workshops or training programs? What does success look like for your clients?
So again, great question. And it means different things to different people throughout the organization. And so that's important too, because for instance, if we're working with an HR team, but the ones who will renew are the COO or the CFO, we need to make sure that we're bringing them into the conversation early. In some, it's across the board. So for some, it's utilization. A lot of times customers will start working with customers who've been using one of these on-demand products. There's a bunch of good ones out there, but let's say their utilization rate is 15, 20%. So obviously the investment's not going very well. So that could be a big, if we can get that up to 50, 60%. I mean, they look at engagement as one big example. Another one is skill assessment, which is hard to figure out sometimes, but we'll come in and say, okay, what are the 3 skills we want to cover? Let's say it's delegation and influencing the authority. And we'll do an assessment like, where are you at when you started? And then check in 6 months later, and has your confidence level gone up? But at the end of the day, I think it's really important to sit down with your customers and find out, give them some examples of what's possible and what's most important for them. And so that when we meet with our clients, a lot of times we meet with them almost monthly or bi-monthly, is we want to bring back those business goals and make sure that we're aligned with what's important to them.
And what does the assessment look?
Because if you don't do that, where you come towards the end of the relationship and you're far off aligned, that engagement's not going to work very much anymore.
And what does the skill assessment look like? Is it a questionnaire? What does that look like for your clients?
Yeah, it's a questionnaire. We have a couple different partners that we use. And right now it's a questionnaire going in, how are you feeling about this specific skill? And then a questionnaire after on a scale of 0 to 10. You were at a 5, now you're at an 8. But then we ask them to tie back, can you give us a specific example of how you've delegated better or you've had a difficult conversation? So we don't want it to just be a number. We want to be able to show some actual behavior change that individuals have made through the training that we've done. Because Mark, your listeners know as well as I do that you can't just come out and take a 2-hour have a difficult conversation class and be like a pro at it. In order for it to retain, you got to actually put in the work and have some accountability around it.
So let's talk about AI. It's rapidly changing the businesses across all industries. How are you keeping relevant and actionable for organizations when it comes to AI and tech transformation?
I think as a small business owner, we have about 75 employees if you add in our contractors and everything. I think it starts with modeling the behavior from the C-level and modeling it internally. For over the last year, my team's probably tired of me talking about AI and using it and leveraging it and highlighting individuals who do. So using it as a team and getting comfortable with it is super important. And through that, we've started to develop courses and areas we could work with our customers on and build out programs around how to leverage AI. We don't really do, here's how to build a prompt or here's how to build an agent. We're more around the change management piece of it, getting comfortable with it and adopting AI. And right now, we look at what our competitors do, but not only our competitors, but other adjacent type of industries. And we're going through a couple of agile sprints right now, to be honest, about whether it's an AI coach or other different types of products, what would work best. Because yes, for all you out there, your industry is going to be disrupted one way or the other. Don't put your head in the sand. You gotta get involved now and figure out how your company is going to look in the next 3 to 5 years or shorter.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, it's happening so fast now. People need to be well versed in being able to use a ChatGPT or a Claude or a Gemini, but equally what the value that it can add as an extra employee for these companies. I think that's the thing that people think they just ask them a question about data or information, but actually using them as another employee is a great way that a lot of companies should be thinking about using AI. Do you agree?
Can I give you a little story of something that I've done with AI? So we got a 12-person sales team. And at the beginning of the year, we were looking at revamping the comp plan. And I think for anybody out there, a small business owner or sales leader, you want to have comp plans that are aligned with what your goals are, right? So if we want to sell more subscription packages or we want to sell more of whatever it is, you want to incentivize the right things and not have too much. So I took the old plan that we had and I sat down with ChatGPT and I asked it a couple questions. I said, I want you to be a senior sales executive who've built comp plans. Yeah. And I just did it over voice. And I'm not going to waste everybody's time going through all the different things I said. But I spent a couple hours back and forth really thinking and asking it questions. And Mark, it came up with this. First, it vetted my current plan and it gave me some of the weaknesses. There's too many things. You're not focusing in the right area. This part's confusing. It's incredible for getting feedback. It really is.
Great. Yeah.
And fast forward through the story, at the end of the day, I had this brand new comp plan. I sent it over to my CRO, fractional CRO, who used to run a sales team at Gong, an enterprise team. And this is one of the most thoughtful, simple, and great comp plans I've seen. I got to figure out how to start leveraging it like this. So for all your listeners out there, it's more than just like fixing your email or whatever. You should use AI as a thought partner and just play around with it. It's amazing what you can do.
Yeah, 100%. How do you at Learn It help support companies, leaders, employees when it comes to employee burnout? It's something that we all are aware of, but I'm interested to see how you're supporting these companies when it comes to things like employee burnout.
Our target customer that we usually work with when it comes to being a learner are new, emerging, and middle managers. And I'm sure, like where you're at and where I'm at, middle managers are just having a difficult time because they're getting it from above and they're getting it from their reports. So they're really struggling with burnout. So how we try to help with it is we want to get intentional with some of the content we put in front of them and help them do things like learn how to set better boundaries for themselves, learn to know how to delegate, how to manage up, having a conversation. I was speaking to one of our clients the other day, and she was frustrated because she's a project manager and somebody else on her team has 3 projects and she's got 10 projects. We just had to have a conversation with them like, okay, how do we go back, speak to our boss and set boundaries? So we have a bunch of content around making you a better leader. And also I think leadership starts with yourself. So what are some changes that you could make to put yourself in a better position to not burn out?
This episode is sponsored by Zach Southall PT. Quick story, I wanted to lose weight and add muscle. Working with my personal trainer Rob at Zach Southall PT with guidance from Zach too has been a game changer for me. They are incredibly supportive and seriously knowledgeable about fitness and nutrition. The first week I recorded and photographed all my food, which Rob was looking at, to assess the nutrition but also the amount of food I was eating. Then we added gym and cardio sessions, which has made me feel healthier and more confident, because when you feel better, you perform better in life and business. The plan that they've created fits my life, training, food and accountability. The results have been great. I feel I'm only partway through this journey and I'm staying with Rob and Zach to hit my target weight and muscle goals. If you want the same momentum, go to the link below to complete the form and Zach will be in contact. If you're a busy business owner not prioritizing your health, this is going to be a game changer. So who are these ideal clients that you work for? Who are the people that you really want to be targeting?
We work with companies of all sizes. We're industry agnostic. What I think our sweet spot is 200 employees to 2,000 employees. And I say that, and hopefully they're going through a growth phase, which we're in a tough, not the best job hiring market, but 200 to 2,000 employees, because they don't typically have an in-house L&D team. So our goal is to be like an outsourced L&D partner for them, where we really get in, learn their culture, learn their business, and again, really do our best to focus on business outcomes. Now we work with massive companies, whether it's Salesforce or Gilead Sciences, all over the world. And that's great, but we're typically for them very specific in a very specific area. And that's pretty much it. Where for these 200 to 2,000 person companies, we're like just part of their organization. We work with smaller ones too. We have quite a few nonprofits that are 25 to 100 employees that we work with. And one of them, I was having a conversation the other day, they even put that on their benefits program, that if you come work at the Yosemite Conservancy, that you get to attend Learn It classes as part of your benefits program. That's some examples of who we serve and how we serve them.
Mm. And how do you market to them? What's your strategy of being able to outreach to them?
That's a great question. And it's changed. I think it's constantly changing. And I also think, first and foremost, my recommendation, and Mark, I'm curious to see what you think, is I think you should test your value proposition maybe twice a year, just to make sure that what you have is still relevant for what your customers need. So first and foremost, you need to make sure your messaging is relevant. For us, we've got an 8-person sales team, and more than half are business development outbound, and we have campaigns that include, I'm a big fan of LinkedIn, to be totally honest. I think that it's less saturated than email and other things. But they have 8 to 12 touch campaign of trying to get conversations with the CHROs or COOs to add value, not just to do features and benefits dump. That's one. We've tried a bunch of different things. We've found that in-person conferences, very specific conferences, have been great. We go to one in healthcare conference or life science conference, and you're sitting in a room with SVPs who are COOs or CHROs. It's, if you're there with them for 2 days, how can you not hopefully build some relationships? And with all that being said, and I don't think this is a bad thing, 70% or 75% of our business is still our existing customers, our repeat business. My advice also to your listeners is, in tough times like this, where trust is low, especially over here where I'm at in America, it's important to double down and take care of your customers, find other ways to expand within their organization to add benefit, but you also need to always be continuously building pipeline. We try everything. I got my podcast. We're always converting content into free events and sharing things out there as the board, but still hitting the phones. I don't think you would want to stop doing that.
Yeah. So moving on, you were an aspiring Major League Baseball player that's moved into CEO of a learning company. What similarities and what differences did you have from that shift, and what have you learned from that transition?
So for me, growing up, that's all I ever thought I would be, is a Major League Baseball player. From the time I was 5 years old until my career came to an end at 22 years old after college, where I didn't get drafted. I got drafted a couple times, twice actually. And when my career came to an end, it was a big identity shift, because I always just thought of myself as a baseball player. And I didn't know if my skills were transferable in the real world, so to speak. And what I want to say out there is, if you are going through some kind of shift or change, that the skills that you pick up, whatever you're doing, are transferable. For me, I was lucky that I came from a family who had a large real estate company and a hotel chain and everything. But my dad was starting this little computer training company back in 1995. I started there as a receptionist. And I look back now and I call it the athletic education. I learned so much from playing sports. I played for 3 Hall of Fame baseball coaches, so I was able to model their behavior, see how they were leaders. I also played for some bad coaches who took all the credit, overpromised, underproduced, and I could think back to them and say, I'm never going to lead this way. But really the main things that you learn through playing sports at all levels are collaboration, discipline, perseverance, and a big one, especially for leaders, is feedback. In baseball, you strike out, you're going to get some feedback, and then you got to have learning agility to turn around and put it in action again. I don't know. It's really, this has been my only career is learn it, but I felt pretty well prepared from a sports background.
What was it like joining your father's company, and how do you think your father's influence has shaped your leadership style today?
So it was interesting because as a 20-some-odd-year-old kid in the middle of the dot-com boom in San Francisco, things were going pretty good pretty quickly. And my dad never worked at Learn It. It was his idea, right? He loved it, and he's always starting different types of businesses and everything. And he never worked it, but he really cared about it. He loved it. It was his idea. And there was some friction between us. I thought I had the right answers sometimes, and I made some big mistakes. We overexpanded against his wishes once I became CEO in 2000, right before the dot-com crash. But at the end of the day, I learned more from him than anybody else. Unfortunately, he passed away of cancer 15 years ago at a pretty early age. But I think that working in a family business and family dynamics can be very challenging. But I don't know, I just always wanted to give back. And I was pretty fortunate from where I came from and great parents. And I wouldn't do it any differently. I enjoyed being in a family business all these years.
And I don't want to dig dirt, but I'm just interested. I hear a lot about family businesses, and I've never been in one or run one or anything, that sometimes the dynamics can be a bit challenging. Was it always for you working for your father's company, or was it that you developed into that it was your company and it was your father that was just who had the ideation for it?
Great question. And when somebody comes to me and says, you came up with the idea for Learn It, I'm like, I did not come up with the idea for Learn It. My dad did. So I don't want to take the credit for that.
Sure.
But if you lined up 10 people who've been through the Learn It journey, all 10 of those people would say that Walt came up with the idea and Damon took it to what it is today. You know what I mean? Pivoted when we needed to pivot from a computer training company to a more of a overall learning organization, especially around soft skills and things like that. And not that I want to brag about it, but if my dad was here, anybody would tell you, he had the idea, but he never spent 15 minutes working inside there, more support. And one thing I would like to say too, when it comes to family businesses, there's a lot of crazy dynamics. And this is a whole nother podcast with looking at my family and the dynamics of the different people coming in from different areas. And so it's kind of like that show Succession, if you ever watched that too.
Yeah.
Not Learn It, but the real estate stuff, my sisters will kill me for saying that, but yeah, it was kind of like Succession, the real estate stuff. That's another
That
story.
sounds like another show, another episode just about the dynamics there. What moment in your journey has there been where you've had to relearn, recreate, you use the word pivot, as a leader and you within the business?
We've been through 3 economic downturns: dot-com, 2009, the Great Recession, and then pivot. So we really had to do so all the time to stay alive or even to thrive. The first big pivot that we made was going from just doing computer training classes. But I'll be honest, when we only did computer training classes and we only did Microsoft Office, we were really dialed in on what our core unique value proposition was. We just did this. And so the messaging was strong and everything, but we needed to do more than that if we wanted to grow and scale our business. And this is where we made the pivot into other areas like leadership training and new manager training. And so that was a big change. COVID was a huge, we didn't even know if we were going to make it through COVID, because even though people were okay doing Microsoft Office classes virtually, moving into emotional intelligence training or listening training. We didn't know at first if people would pivot into the virtual world to do it. So that was a big pivot. We were able to, people became comfortable with it just like they did on doctor's appointments and everything else. For me as a leader, and I feel like a lot of leaders would say this, I look back 30 years ago, every couple of years I look back and say, man, I wonder why I did it that way. There's always, I think it's important as a leader to always reflect back, see what you did well, but be open to feedback, see what you could have done differently. And I think I've grown a lot as a leader over the years. And one of the things that's helped me the most, I think, over the last 2 years, and I know that you work on this a lot, is guesting on podcasts and having my own podcast, both of those, because it helps you become a better speaker, a better listener. And I've found myself being able to share my ideas better. I've been better at it. And I also feel like I ask better questions. So I think it's a great avenue, guesting and hosting podcasts. It's like one of the biggest changes I've made over the last couple of years that I've really enjoyed.
Yeah,
A pro like you've been at it for 8 years. But
I was going to say, it's you haven't got to look for any buy-in with me. I can see the value and the impact that it has being a guest as well as a host. We were talking with a new client on board yesterday, and I was saying to them, just make sure you're present and in the moment when you're answering the questions. And they looked at me, of course I'm going to be doing that. And I'm like, no, just really think about, there's lots of things that we help people with about key messaging and getting the right stories and things like that. But just being actually present and thinking about the questions that they're asking you is a really great way to be able to formulate how you communicate to your team, to your clients, whether you're doing BD, whether you're doing sales. It formulates those ideas and the way that you structure your communication style. And it's a great way, either as a host or as a guest, to be able to develop those skills. So does that resonate with you?
100%. And I take it one step further. I would say 5-10 minutes prior to being a guest, it's time to start shifting your mindset to think about what you're going into, to start being present. Because earlier on, I struggled with that. I would get done with a really difficult conversation or something at work, jump on a podcast as a guest, and I couldn't really formulate my questions and answers. So it's really been great. I like to say that I've become a better listener, and my wife kind of laughs, but I think it's definitely true. And I also want to say out there for the small business owners and entrepreneurs, back in the day, I was always the guy behind the scenes running sales calls, doing whatever. But now it's almost expected of you to be out there and sharing your thought leadership and your content. Yeah. And that was a big pivot I made, Mark, getting out of my comfort zone, getting out and doing keynotes and posting on LinkedIn and social media. And it's one of the best decisions or most fun things I've done, because I've been at this for 30 years, right? So you got to find ways to keep it exciting and interesting and evolving yourself if you want your organization to evolve. And I don't know, I really enjoy the podcasting stuff, as you can tell.
Do you do your own courses? So as a leader within your organization, do you ever do your training and eat your own pie that you're selling? Is that something that you do yourself and your team does?
Yeah, 100%. I don't lead any of the courses myself. I did back in the day, but no, I definitely attend classes with our team, but not just Learn It classes. I like to bring in outside providers to deliver. Just today, we have another podcast, somebody who's on my show, who's doing a workshop for us around how to build business outcomes. But if you want to develop an organization of a learning organization, especially for what we do, because that's what we sell, you have to roll up your sleeves and lead by example. Whether it's attending Learn It courses, I really enjoyed our listening class. I took that one. And also our feedback class, and I always have little tweaks and feedback for it and stuff like that. But no, I enjoy doing those types of classes. As a small business owner, I also want to do book clubs or give people, we have a little budget for everybody set up when it comes to learning, but they don't have to do things just for their work, Mark. I just want them to get in the habit of learning agility, right? Just be interested in learning and growing. because if you do that, then you are going to be able to be more adaptable quicker. So it's a long answer, but no, I participate. I once let a guy go, a hotshot sales guy who came on board from one of our competitors. I said, I want you to attend these 2 classes on work time, and I want you to read the sales book, and I'll read it with you. And after 2 weeks, the guy didn't do anything, didn't even start with it. So I'm like, how can you get in front of a customer, right, and be passionate about what you're doing if you have no interest in evolving and growing yourself? So that's just not the type of values that we have in our organization.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really important. So let's touch on COVID. So it was obviously a really big area of change for a lot of companies. A lot of people went online, and we're now so much more comfortable, whether it's Zoom, Google Meets, what we're on, Squadcast or Riverside or whatever it is, that this sort of experience is now a lot more expected. But that obviously was a massive change, especially for learning and development. As you say, like pre-COVID, you were probably doing a lot of face-to-face in-person training. How did that actually change, and how did your trainers develop? How did you manage to grow the business through such a turbulent time?
We were doing some virtual training beforehand. Not a lot, but some. So we had some experience. We were using at the time Adobe Connect, which really dropped the ball. They could have turned into Zoom, but it was antiquated. And we were also, as much as I like coming into, we used to have a 10,000 square foot office in San Francisco, and I love coming in. But we also, several years earlier, had a much more flexible work environment where people were working from home a couple of days a week if they wanted to. And everybody had laptops and everything. So from an organization, we were able to pivot very quickly to everybody going remote. But then we just met as a team, me and our product team, over and over again to figure out how are we going to convert these courses and make them a much better experience. And we tried all kinds of different things. At first, we bought those owls where we thought people could still come into the classrooms and just be spaced out between each other, and that obviously failed. But then one of the tough things was a lot of times customers maybe wanted refunds, but we just asked them, hey, look, can we just hold on to this for a while and give us three to 6 months? Because if we have to give everybody the refunds, we're going to be out of business. Stuck with us. They started getting comfortable doing training. Not only did they get comfortable, but they looked at it as a way for social connection, where individual contributors, all of a sudden the CEO or senior level executives would be popping on these classes, and people felt more connected, especially at the beginning of COVID. Yeah. One big decision that we made was we never went back to an office space. Even though my brother and I bought a building, that sunken cost fallacy, like it doesn't make sense to go back in person, because what we did is we pivoted, again, I use the word pivoted, but we went to a more subscription-based model, even for live learning, which we couldn't have done if everything was in person, because not everybody's going to drive to San Francisco to take classes. Yeah. So now people can get on in London and New York and in North Dakota, wherever, and we have these subscription models. And so that's really helped us scale our business and really change the way we go about things.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for your openness and your honesty. How do you hiring and firing is, in my mind, the hardest thing in business. How do you identify the best talent that you bring into your company, whether it's trainers, salespeople, operations, whether it's finance, whatever area, HR? How do you hire and how do you retain your best talent?
I'm with you. I think that hiring and firing people are very difficult, very difficult. A lot of trial and error over the years, to be honest. But I think that I don't think I have any superpowers, but if I did, it's the ability to attract and retain top talent. And what I've always been a big believer in, Mark, is I like to hire for attitude and aptitude over experience, like the gentleman I told you who didn't make it with us. Obviously you can't do it for every single role, but whether it's sales, whether it's trainers, they don't need to have 15 years of experience in doing it. I want people who have drive, who have that learning mentality and aren't afraid to get out of their comfort zone and try things. And then in order to do that, you got to have the type of culture we call it learn it all culture or learning culture, where people can make mistakes. There's that safety that they know that they're not going to get reprimanded if things don't go well. So you got to set people up for success, and then you got to give them the autonomy or empower them to do things and turn it into, if I mess up something, which happens all the time, I'm not afraid to say, be vulnerable and say, hey, look, this didn't go well. So then you start creating the culture where people feel like they actually contribute, and they're not just paycheck players where they come in through the door and leave, right? They actually can share up their ideas. And I think as a small business owner, especially, a lot of my best ideas and classes didn't come from me. They came from the front lines. The people, our trainers who were in with the students, the people who are answering the phones. And so if you're curious and you're listening to them, and then you give them credit, right? So then this, all of a sudden, you're elevating these individuals. And what's worked really well for Learn It is if somebody leaves, and this was tough for me, and they're a top performer, I don't get pissed at them. I'm like, hey, I wish them the best of luck. If you ever want to come back, let me know. I got this woman, Carly Lutz. I talk about her in my book. She was with me for a long time. She left for 3 or 4 years. She just came back. The grass isn't always greener. And so it's building, I call it the Learn It alumni. And so a lot of times they come back, but a lot of times people know what it's like to work for me, right? Or what it is like to work for Learn It. So they're always sending me individuals like when we're hiring, hey, this person would be a good fit. I could see this person be a great fit for your culture. Mm-hmm. The other thing I'll say is if you have somebody who has the right values, has the right attitude, and maybe they're in sales, but they're not doing well, be curious, have a conversation with them. Is there another area that can benefit your organization, and put them in that role and give them a shot at that? We had a guy, Joe Patty, went from sales, miserable, didn't work out too well. He's been one of our top instructors for a long time. But when it comes on the other end to letting people go and firing them, very difficult. People should never be surprised that they're getting let go. There should be constant conversations, coaching throughout. They should never be surprised. But what I like to tell our customers and our leaders at Learn It, and I look at myself too, Mark, is a lot of times you're doing them a favor. If people are miserable in their job, it's time for them to go find something where they can be successful.
Yeah.
And you have to do that. And for your small business leaders, if you're thinking about somebody who's on your team, maybe they're even if they're a high performer, but they're super toxic, you got to either coach them up or coach them out, because everybody else around is looking, and it can really erode your culture.
Yeah. So you're a learning and development company. What's been the most impactful book, training book, or book that for you has had the biggest impact to you for a leader?
I think one of my favorite books early on in my career was definitely, Richard Branson's Losing My Virginity.
Yeah.
I love that book. I love all his work, but that one was because, first of all, I love rock music and everything, so I love the stories.
Yeah.
But it was David versus Goliath stories all the time, or the virgin air. It was going up against the big guys and beating them. So that was a great book for me early on. I love Obstacles Away by Ryan Holiday, because it's just like working within your constraints. And as a small business owner, nothing's linear. You know that. You have your ups and your downs. And I love reading biographies. I'm a big Churchill fan also. I guess all these London guys, right? But anyways, and I think you learn so much from biographies. Another one I'll mention is Team Arrivals, Doris Goodwin, where Abraham Lincoln brings in all these people into his cabinet who hate him. But it's just a great book for learning around how to lead with a diverse talent and diverse strengths. I could probably go on for a lot, but those are some of my favorite books.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. What for you is the plan for the next 2 to 5 years?
I'd say for the next 2 to 5 years, we're at one of these points with Learn It, is we need to figure out, do we continue on the same path that we're going, or do we make a pivot, a slight pivot? Again, I'm keep using that word, but do we start helping our customers with AI readiness? And there's certain things that organizations need to do, whether it's around data, whether it's around energy, but it's also big around talent development. And I think that live learning is always going to be around. I don't think it's going to be replaced by AI in our lifetime, at least. It's definitely going to be supplemented, But I think that, yeah, sure, teaching more courses on AI, but I also think helping these organizations make these transitions, because only 15% of organizations are using AI right now. And so they're
Right.
going to need to grow and evolve. And so we're just looking to see, do we want to go deeper into what we're currently doing, or do we want to start setting up a practice around training and maybe even consulting, helping organizations become AI ready?
Interesting. Interesting. So we're coming to the end of the interview. I ask the same 6 questions to all of my guests. They're quick fire questions. They don't need a quick fire answer. The first question is, what's the best decision that you made?
The best decision I made is, I would say, probably quitting drinking 8 years ago. It's definitely up there, one of my top decisions. I never got in trouble for drinking. I never got like a DUI or whatever, but growing up in San Francisco Bay Area, drank a lot going out. And when I got to be in my early 40s, I just realized that you didn't recover as quickly. And so I'd say since then, I've been a much sharper. I feel better about myself. And as we were talking about, I got two little kids, and I don't think I could take care of them or be a great leader if I didn't make that decision. So it's one of the ones I'm most proud of.
That's interesting. Okay. What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
The best piece of advice I've been given was by a gentleman who worked VP at Morgan Stanley. And it's a sales piece of advice, is that when you're reaching out to your prospects or your customers, always add value. Don't just call up and check in with somebody like, oh, how's it going? Just checking in. Every conversation you need to have with your customers, I think you really need to add value. And with deep research and everything that we have out there these days, it's so much easier. So have a point of view, add value, and serve your customers.
Amazing. Who's the person that's helped you most in your career?
My dad, without a doubt. First, I've been fortunate. I've had all these great baseball coaches and maybe mentors along the way, but back in 2000, when we got over our skis, as we like to say here, and overexpanded, for one, if I didn't have his financial support with him and my grandfather, there would be no Learn It for the first go round, for the first .com times. But he liked to say, hey kid, you got the most expensive MBA I've ever seen, but I believe in you and we'll make it through. And I always looked up to him and like to go see him speak at his big shareholders meetings and everything. But he had the most positive impact on me of everybody in my career.
Amazing. Thank you. Tell me about a regret that you have.
A regret I have is that when I was 17 years old, I was sitting at the dinner table with my parents and this baseball scout named Bill Serena from the Atlanta Braves, and he presented a contract to me for $100,000, which in 1990 is a lot of money, to sign with the Atlanta Braves. My parents gave me the opportunity. They said, this is your life. Do you want to go college baseball or do you want to go pro? And I decided to go college for a couple of reasons. One, I really bought into the values and not the values, but the goal. Yes, the values, but the goals of the coach I was going to go play for at Pepperdine. But two, I was intimidated. I was afraid to start my big league career or my minor league career. And I always thought that I'd get another opportunity like that to be able to do it. So my regret is not signing that contract and going the minor league route. And I think sometimes we're afraid of failure, and the opportunities that we don't take are the ones we kind of regret. So for me, that's something that I regret. But things turned out okay.
Where do you think you would have ended up if you'd signed that contract? Would you have been fast-tracked into Major League?
No. First of all, I don't know if you're a baseball fan. I would have played with a guy named Chipper Jones for the Atlanta Braves. Yeah. And it's very difficult, right? I would say less than 10% of people who get drafted make it to the big leagues. My advantage was that I got offered a large sum of money back at the time, not like Chipper did, enough that they'd give you 3 to 4 years to try to grow and evolve. And if you ask my parents at the time, or maybe even some of my friends, they think I probably would have made it to the big leagues. But I don't know. I think everything happens for a reason. Yeah. But I do kick myself sometimes for never getting an opportunity to see it play out.
Yeah. Was there a time that you wanted to give up, and what pulled you through?
Yeah, there's been plenty of times where, having to contact my family every couple of weeks and ask for money to help cover payroll. And this is back in the .com days for the 2009 recession and COVID. I'd never had it anymore. But what got me to pull through is one, I'm just resilient, and I really loved Learn It, and I didn't want to give up. And I felt like I owed it to the people I work with. I'm like, hey, I'm responsible for helping them with their mortgage. I'm sure they could find their own jobs, right? But I knew what we're doing was important to the people that I work with, and that the value we bring to our clients was there, and it was important. I never really had a strong inkling of giving up, but when it did cross my mind, I just pushed it away and worked through it. But not by myself. You know what I mean? I never went at any of this by myself, whether it's to my family or our leadership team. I always had a very good support group, which I was lucky for.
Yeah, amazing. Tell me something that most people don't know about you.
Most people that know me, or if you read my book, I'm a big music fan. Rock and roll and Guns N' Roses, Metallica, all these, Ozzy Osbourne, who unfortunately just passed away, all that stuff. Yeah. What most people don't know about me is that I also like Broadway musicals, and which my buddies, I don't know, give me a hard time about it. But I've seen, I don't know, Les Mis probably 20 times, whatever. Wow. So that's the thing. So for somebody who's 80s, 90s rock guy, who's got plenty of stories of meeting a lot of those rock stars and all this stuff, can also pivot and go see Frozen with my little daughter, or go see Les Mis by myself, or Phantom, or Kinky Boots, or whatever it is. So that's what most people don't know.
That's amazing. That's a great answer. Next question. What does legacy mean to you?
What legacy means to me, I want, maybe it sounds cliche to say it, but what we do at Learn It, I really believe that we're making the next generation of great leaders. And both as clients, but also we just had our 30-year anniversary party, and over 300 people showed up. And Mark, sure, I love our clients, right? But to me, it's seeing people who started earlier in their career, people like Laurel Taylor, who right out of college worked for me and said, Damon, you gave me my first shot. Now she's raised $60 million and she's got her own student debt company, crushing student debt. Or guys like Josh Mitchell, or the CTO of Autodesk, all knowing that I played a small part in their role, gave them a shot. So to me, that's legacy. But most importantly for me is, just like I have with my parents, I just want to be a great dad for Wally and Lucy, right? Legacy of leading by example, and then helping other people give them their shot.
Amazing. And where can people find you if they want to reach out to you or find out more about your business?
So if you want to find out more about me or my business, connect with me on LinkedIn, Damon Lembi. Check out my podcast, the Learn It All podcast. And and I could send Mark a link to this, but if you want a couple free classes, there'll be something in show notes, maybe, if you have, or send me a note on LinkedIn, and I can give you. The classes are like $250. So if you want to take one or two of them, just hit me up and let me know. And also, I've got that book, Learn It All Leader. Start with LinkedIn. Connect with me on Damon Lembi on LinkedIn.
Brilliant. Thank you, Damon. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure learning about you and your business. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Brilliant.